In this episode of Rich in Relationship, why sharing sometimes isn't the same as caring. You started your family, your business maybe if you're working together, because you trusted each other, you cared about each other, you wanted to build something, a family, a business, all of the above together. You wanted to make decisions together. You wanted to share the weight of it together. And somewhere along the line, that vision quietly became, we're both responsible for everything. Why? Because we're equal. Nobody decided that, by the way. It just kind of happens. And it happens all the time because, well, you are equal, but guess what? In some ways, you're not. And that's usually where the trouble begins, right there, is when it just happens instead of people thinking about it. A couple I worked with was having this experience, both exhausted, both frustrated, both absolutely convinced they're carrying more than the other. So we sit down and start mapping it out. We start mapping out what both of them do at home, kids, cleaning, food, travel, at work, marketing, sales, hiring, etc. But here's what happens. Something goes wrong. Maybe one of the kids isn't getting their homework assignments in, or maybe a customer complains, and neither of them really wants to handle it. So both of them jump in with the kid's problem. The teacher's confused. Why are they coming in at me separately? Customer's confused. Why are they both talking to me? So we go through this, and the whiteboard fills up with areas like this where both of them feel responsible, right? Because they haven't been talking about it. And at some point, the room gets quiet because now they can see it. Not hear it, not feel it. They see it up there on the board. The areas of responsibility in business: marketing, sales, vision, people, systems, money and metrics, at home, paying the bills, putting money away for the future, putting the kids to bed, feeding, buying the food, cooking, managing schools, managing play dates. They see it all up there. And they see that there's a huge amount of overlap. They've both been thinking that they were covering everything. But the truth is that neither of them were fully owning any one thing. They were jumping in and covering things because they thought the other person should be doing it, but they weren't. And that's when I say to them, you know what? Neither of you are lazy. You're both working really hard. The problem isn't effort. You are kicking butt and taking names. The problem is that nobody owns these things, or anything for that matter. Or another way to put it is both of you think you own everything. They came in thinking that they had a problem communicating with each other, that they were missing each other in some way, and they were missing each other, but it's because they weren't talking about the right things. It wasn't actually a communication problem. It was the frame with which they were looking at their lives. They didn't have a problem with motivation. They didn't have a problem with appreciation. Well, maybe a little bit, because it's hard to appreciate someone when you think they're supposed to be doing more. What they actually had is an ownership problem. What am I responsible for? Only me, personally, just me. And the truth is that until you name it correctly, you cannot fix it. If you can't see what the actual problem is, how are you going to fix it? They'd gone to a family therapist and they'd done all kinds of communication exercises. That didn't fix the problem. They communicated better, but they didn't see what the problem was they actually needed to fix. And the family therapist only has one lens. Now, I do this work because I grew up in this world. I've worked with my partner, I've worked with my kids, and I've worked with my mom. And my mom built this company called Mournhurst Gardens. It was a name that she picked to honor her father, my grandfather, really lovely man. And it was proof that names do not make a huge difference in brand. Though for her, because she had an English accent, it kind of worked. Hello, I'm Anne Levine, and this is Mournhurst Gardens. It's kind of worked for her. For me, it was like I work at Mournhurst Gardens, right? And I went and I worked there. We shared that business. We worked together in it. I came into it with my own book of business. She had her book of business. We put the two together and we had a partnership. And we both managed the employees. She'd hired most of them. I had been working on my own for the most part. We both handled scheduling. It made sense. She knew the people and I knew the operation. So Why not both? But what we had created without thinking was two bosses. And two bosses means employees learn very quickly that if they don't like one answer, they can go find the other person. You know, parents, this happens all the time, right? Your kids don't like what dad says, so they go to mom and vice versa. This is called splitting. Well, guess what? It doesn't just happen with your kids. If you're working together and you have employees, the employees will ring this bell too. Guess where they learned it? They learned it in their families. And if a strategy works in your family, it'll work in other places. And it worked here. And sometimes the bosses, whether it's mom and dad at home or at work, sometimes the bosses are saying contradictory things. No, you can't have ice cream. All right, you can have ice cream today. Or at work, hey, you've got to finish this job. It's really important. Hey, you know what? We can finish it tomorrow. And nobody knows who to listen to. But here's the part that still stays with me today. Those employees had been with my mom for a couple of years, and they looked up to her in the same way that she sold herself to her clients as Anne Levine of Mournhurst Gardens, this very classy, intelligent woman with really exquisite taste. The employees were bought into her. It's not unusual for employees to project a little and to make their boss their mom or their dad. And they were very loyal to her. They were, in a very real sense, part of her world. And then I arrived. They didn't experience it as the business is maturing. They experienced it as we used to be Anne's family. Now we've been replaced by Anne's family. Or we used to feel like we were her kids, but the real kid came and displaced us. Hey, and I've seen this happen in other businesses too. I practiced karate in a dojo, and when the owner of the dojo brought his son in as his second in command, a lot of the students who thought they were his children quit and left. They were like, this isn't right. It should have been me. It happens in all kinds of environments. And it wasn't, in our case, a scheduling problem. It was a wound that only got resolved when my mother stepped back and let me manage the crew completely. And it didn't happen without friction. I remember one day I was out in the field with a crew, and they had really inadequate tools, and I had brought my own tools, and I jumped in and started managing the crew and telling everyone what to do. And the guy who had been the boss before I came in said, listen, Rich, you're gonna do this my way or I'm gonna hit you with a shovel. And he literally said this to me, right? And he had a shovel in his hand. And I turned to him and I said, if you hit me with a shovel, that isn't gonna get the job done. So why don't you just take this tool and let's get to work. And then I went right back to work, turned my back on him because I knew he wasn't gonna hit me with a shovel. But it was a hairy moment. There was a moment there where I was wondering, am I gonna be brawling on the street in front of this client, really big client? And it worked out because in the end, I'm gonna say it, I was the bigger dog. I was the son of the owner. I was younger than this guy. And honestly, I was much, much more confident than he was for a large, I told you, I was at the time, I was a second-degree black belt in karate. I really had no fear of him. And because I was fearless, it just moved on. And that guy quit, by the way. As you can imagine, within 2 weeks, he was gone. I didn't even have to fire him. And there were other people that I just had to let go of. I told you about the crazy Brazilian guy. He didn't last very long with me. I couldn't put up, he was stealing from our suppliers. I couldn't permit that. There were things that were going on under my mom's watch that just weren't okay for me. Shared ownership wasn't protecting the team. It was quietly damaging them. And it wasn't until my mom stepped out and I stepped in 100% that things really started to change. The team changed, the efficiency changed, so much changed. And here's what I see over and over with entrepreneurial couples who are in the same position me and my mom were in. They confuse shared responsibility with shared ownership. In fact, they avoid the disagreements that might come up cutting up the pie, just like my mom and I did. And I completely understand why, right? You want to get along. You want to feel like there's trust. You want to feel like there's love, there's fairness, there's partnership, right? Your family, you should just be able to do stuff, right? But it's business, it's a little different. Or is it really? Because the same things that happen in businesses happen in the home, right? Exactly what I'm describing to you now about this business happens in the home. People bring in au pairs and have the same kind of challenges as I'm talking about with these employees that I'm telling you. When it comes to getting things done, fairness and effectiveness are not always the same thing. They're both important, but they're not the same thing. You can be completely committed to each other as family members, as partners, and still be utterly and completely getting in each other's way. And in my mother's case, we cared about each other and we utterly and completely got in each other's way, particularly with the employees, not so much with the clients because she was managing them at that time. That's another story I'll save for another podcast. Healthy partnerships don't say we both own everything. Healthy partnerships say, I'm really good at this, so why don't I own this? You're really good at that, so why don't you own that? We both support each other. That's not division, that's trust in action. When we work through this with couples, we use 3 buckets. Owner, one person makes the calls, lives with the results, the buck stops there. Contributor, the other partner gives input, brings perspective, gets heard, but doesn't make the final call. Informed, both stay in the loop, neither side is blindsided. So let me make it more concrete, all right? When we were changing the staff at Mortonhurst Gardens, or the guy I told you about, Dennis, God rest his soul, he's passed away now, he just left. And that kind of opened up a whole can of worms. And I said to my mom, hey, I need to own the operations side of things. This is my strength. I'm really good at getting things done. That means I need to own the team. There are people that I need to let go of because they're not honest. You're not going to like some of the changes I'm going to make, but I need to make it. And she said, all right, it's on you. You succeed or you fail. I said to her, I'm going to need your help though, right? Because the truth is, anyone I work with needs to work with you. So I need you to be a contributor. I need you to help with the hiring process. I need you to weigh in on the people that need to move on, how we're going to let them go, where are we going to find someone to replace their skill set, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we need to be talking about what are the interactions you're having with some of these people, what are the interactions that I'm having with them. We need to keep each other informed, right? Owner, contributor, and informed. One owner, one area, total clarity. And that owner, by the way, if there's a bad hire, even if the contributor contributes and informs, the owner still owns that. There's no, but you said, right? None of that crap. If you own it, you own it. Let's go back to the couple from earlier. 6 months after clarifying ownership, they had fewer arguments, faster decisions, they had real accountability, deeper trust, and more importantly, they were making more money and they were getting things done at home too. Their kids were better cared for. They were doing better in school. They weren't splitting them as much. There was deeper trust and more safety. Because honestly, when ownership is shared, it feels unsafe. And here's the part that really surprised them and surprises most people every time. They felt more like real partners. They were able to say, man, you did that so much better than I would. You're so strong in this area that I'm not. Because now, when they came together, it was by choice, not out of obligation or fear of being left out. They weren't managing each other or each other's stuff anymore. They were trusting each other. And prosperous partnerships aren't built by 2 people doing everything. They're built by 2 people who trust each other enough to let go of something. They trust the other person enough to let them make mistakes with it and learn from it, because that's how we all learn and grow, right? You don't learn by not making mistakes. And when the other person makes a mistake, instead of saying, I trusted you with that, how could you do that? They say, you know what? I make mistakes too. And they help them extrapolate the lesson. They know who owns what. They know where to contribute. They know when to step back. They know when to talk about what's going on and be informative, because everything works better when it's owned individually. When everything is shared, nothing gets done. But when ownership is clear, momentum, even synergy will follow. Thank you for listening to Rich in Relationship. Have an amazing day and a fantastic tomorrow. And tune in for more.